my friends, and welcome back to the School for School Counselors podcast. I'm so glad you're back here with me for another episode. I'm Steph Johnson, founder of School for School Counselors, and today we're going to talk about something that's going to be near and dear to a lot of your hearts. We're going to be talking about school refusal. If I were a betting woman, I would bet that you have many students on your campus currently that are having difficulty maintaining good attendance at school. It seems to be an epidemic that we're facing since all of the COVID quarantines and all those kinds of things. You know, like we said in the last episode, I'm just so tired of saying since COVID, right? Since COVID, everything's different. Since COVID, everything's changed. But really, that's our reality. And we've seen so many students who might have been struggling with attendance pre-COVID, now just absolutely refusing school post-COVID. And we're also seeing students that we'd never identified with attendance concerns, now all of a sudden having a really difficult time making it to school. So today on this episode, we're going to bring you some best practices for addressing school refusal in students. And if you've been listening for any time, you know that we're going to be bringing you the best in research-based approaches. None of these old wives' tales floating around the internet on the school counseling Facebook groups or anything like that. We're going to be bringing you the real stuff, the real information, because when we know better, we do better, right? And when we do better, that's when we help students to the fullest extent of our ability. And that's what we're here to do as School for School Counselors. But before we get started, I want to give a shout out to Tracy G. Tracy G left a really kind and sweet review on the podcast not too long ago. She said, "This is probably the most encouraging podcast on school counseling I've ever heard. I feel less overwhelmed when I listen to it because I feel supported as a school counselor. I love the way it helps me put things into a more relatable perspective. Thank you for sharing your gifts of encouragement and teaching." Thank you so much, Tracy. You have no idea, my friends, what that does just to help keep things going around here. I'm a full-time school counselor just like you. And so finding the time in my day to record and upload podcasts all the time sometimes can feel pretty sparse. But when I get reviews like that, and I know that we're making a difference for so many of our colleagues, y'all, it makes it so easy to keep doing it. And I just feel so grateful and so humble to be here speaking with you on the podcast, and I hope that you are loving it too. If you are, would you hop on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review? Because that is the most wonderful way to help us get the word out about this podcast and to continue inspiring and motivating even more of our school counseling colleagues. Just search us up in Apple Podcasts. It's School for School Counselors podcast. Scroll down and find all the ratings and reviews. Hit see all, and then you can tap to rate or tap to write a review. It's super easy, but it means the absolute world to us. And I know we've got the best friends, colleagues, and fans around, so I look forward to seeing what you have to say about the podcast. All right, so school refusal. What do we do about school refusal? The research tells us that students who reject school are at a higher risk of developing social anxiety problems, as well as manifesting family conflicts. And school refusal is typically around 5 to 10% of the general population, according to the research. I would wager to say it's a little bit different these days. You'll see a little bit higher rates of school refusal in urban areas, but the rates are equal between genders and across socioeconomic statuses. So this is an equal opportunity barrier for students for sure. When kids are absent from school a lot, they may find that they start to lose friends. They might start feeling somewhat isolated socially. And then they begin to lose the opportunities to improve those relationships and social skills. It starts to become this taller and taller mountain for them to climb to get back into the social circle. And we know that for students, particularly our middle school and high school students, that is a huge concern of theirs, just developmentally, right? So when they're not in school enough, this starts to feel like the impossible dream. Getting reacclimated to the school world just feels like it could never happen again. Students also will, of course, fall behind on their schoolwork when they're not in school, and that's just going to reinforce their fear of failing, of feeling behind, of feeling like they're not going to be able to catch up, and it just becomes this ugly monster that they try to escape. We also know that when students are absent from school a lot, they report feeling decreased anxiety and decreased depression when they're not attending. That's because it's a short-term solution. They're trying to escape these feelings of anxiety and depression about their social isolation, about academic failure, those kinds of things. And so in the short term, it really does feel good to them to just stay home or not attend school. But in the long run, depressive symptoms are going to start to emerge. The risk of failing is going to become larger and larger, and eventually it's going to become a huge battle to fight. When students refuse school continuously, it also has effects on their family structure. Lots of family discord comes out of that, sometimes legal involvement, criminal behavior, right? Especially for our older students who can get out and around on their own. If they're choosing to go do other things instead of attending school, that can often lead to some really bad choices. Additionally, substance abuse is a concern for students who do not attend school regularly, and economic deprivation. Because if you don't attend school often enough to graduate, which is typically the baseline criteria for getting a job that will pay you a living wage, you're going to fall into economic deprivation in your future. The problem is students who are in this zone often can't look that far into the future, right? Even if they wanted to, they may not have the frontal lobe ability to consider the effects of their choices. So it gets to be pretty touchy. Now, we talked last week about what looks like separation anxiety in younger students and how we can address that. So if you're dealing with that, I urge you go back, check the podcast episode right before this. We had a lot of tips and hints and tricks from research to address those kinds of issues. But as we talk about older students and school refusal, we typically see 4 major drives for not attending school. Number 1, they're just avoiding the promotion of that negative affect. They don't want to feel the uncomfortable feelings that come with attending school. Second, they're seeking to escape social or evaluative situations, feeling like they're being judged, feeling like people are looking at them, feeling like they've been left out, feeling as though their peer group has moved on without them, all of those things. Third, they may be pursuing attention from others. We talked about this a little bit when we talked about separation anxiety, and you would typically see this in your younger students. But, when you stay home from school, you may have access to people all by yourself that you typically don't have access to at other times. For instance, if you stay home and a grandparent is sent to take care of you, and you typically don't get to see that grandparent a lot, then that could be a reinforcer for not wanting to attend school. In the same line of thought, if students have a big family, they don't often get one-on-one time with the adults in their life. This can sometimes feel like a great way to get it. Most commonly, though, for older students, we see reason number 4. And that is accessing tangible rewards outside of school. So when we talk about tangible rewards here, we're talking about things like hanging out, sleeping late, amenities at home, snacks, video games, technology, those kinds of things. So what do we do about it? Right? It's great to know the theory behind it. It's great to kind of have an idea of what's driving this behavior. But at the end of the day, what can we do about it as school counselors if we're not in the students' homes? We can't force them to come to school. We can't force their parents to force them to come to school. So what is it that we can do on our side to encourage school attendance, encourage kids to show up and to achieve so that they can be better invested in good outcomes and positive futures? There are going to have to be some coordinated efforts, and they're going to have to be coordinated between the school, the parents, and the student, and most likely that means you're going to be the one doing the coordination. There are some things that you can do to encourage not only the students, but the parents. First is increasing supervision of your students of concern during things like lunch times or breaks, when they may have the opportunity to sort of slip away. Have you ever seen those ghost students? They're there one moment and then you look and they're not there anymore and no one knows where they went. Increasing supervision in those times for students can kind of help cut down on some school refusal behaviors. Second, communication with parents. This is far and away the most effective intervention, and it sounds so simple, but I'm telling you, it pays off in spades. Providing attendance logs, or even better, immediate phone calls to parents when students are not in attendance. It does not have to be an accusing kind of phone call. It doesn't have to be anything negative. Just something along the lines of, hey, we noticed Bobby wasn't at school today. We're really missing him. We hope he's well. When might we expect him back? Some campuses have seen great success as well with messaging or emailing the student when they're out. Hey, bud, this is Mrs. Smith. I noticed I missed you in social studies today. I hope you're okay. I'm looking forward to when you're back in my class again. If you need anything in the meantime, please reach out. Something like that. It's just something really short and sweet and simple. Just letting students know they've been missed. Often, especially if they're lacking the social connection at school, this is going to do a lot to help them feel connected, like people care if they're there or if they're not. It's a big deal. And so just that personal touch and reaching out is far and away the best intervention that we've found so far to address school refusal. Home-to-school contracts can help as well. If the parent is encouraging school refusal behavior or if they are accommodating it, it's often helpful to draw up a home-to-school contract about what constitutes a viable absence, what should the parent be looking for, those kinds of things, because sometimes parents just don't know. They don't know whether to send their student to school or not, and the student has figured out what they can say to be able to get out of going. And so if we provide some really clear guidelines, help the parents brainstorm what that needs to look like in their home, that can often be helpful as well. Escorting students to their most missed classes. This is pretty intensive, and you got to be careful with this one because you don't want to humiliate students. But at the same time, if they're in danger of failing or not graduating, this might be an option. Research tells us that it is expected to work. And last is counseling on campus when they're there. Not only through something like motivational interviewing, where you're asking them to identify their goals, really think about where they're headed and why they want to go that direction, but also teaching students how to refuse offers to miss school. If they have a peer group that consistently encourages them to miss school, because we know peer groups hold a lot of sway with our students, teaching them how to refuse those offers without losing face is huge for them, because often they go along with it. They just don't know what else to say or do, and so they just go along with the crowd and then perhaps regret it later. So I hope this was helpful to you as we talk about school refusal. It is a tough situation to be in when you have a student or students who are refusing to attend school. But hopefully, if you can really build some great relationships between home and school, if you can get parents on board with the importance of their student attending school every day, and if you can provide some of these efforts, increased supervision, escorting students to classes, as well as school to home communication through attendance logs, phone calls, or contracts, and then offering counseling on campus when students are there, just to help them through the barriers to attendance, is going to go a super long way. We have some more information about this in our School for School Counselors Mastermind. We have a tip sheet on how to talk with parents about attendance concerns, separation anxiety, and school refusal. And we want you to join in that conversation. You know, it's one thing to know what to do. It's a whole other thing to get in there and actually do it. Right? And it's even a bigger thing to get in there and work on what you want to do and have it not work. Try to tweak the process, try to figure out what's going to work for this student versus the other student. It just gets to feel really overwhelming. And so we want to be your advisory committee. We want to be your colleagues. We want to be your support and consultation source. In our School for School Counselors Mastermind, we meet just about every week to talk through all the issues that our members are having. It's an amazing time, so incredibly empowering, and we want this for all of our colleagues in school counseling. You can check out more information on it at schoolforschoolcounselors.com/mastermind. We would love to see you there. And until I talk with you next time, I hope you have the best week ever. Take care. Have a good week, friends.